Hi everyone, and welcome to today's third installment of the Jazz Academy's online lessons for Omaha Performing Arts. We're really happy to be a part of OPA's interlude time where we're still working to connect with students and community members online, even though right now maybe it's a little challenging for us to connect in person. So there's lots of great opportunities for students to check out. You can go to the website o-pa.org/digital-learning. I'll project it on the screen so you can check that out if you want to. That's where you can access these lessons along with a lot of other great programming that Omaha Performing Arts offers during this interlude time. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the style that we play when we play jazz, and we're going to focus mostly on swing. Now there are a variety of styles that we encounter when we work in kind of the jazz idiom. However, swing is at the center and is at the foundation. So we're going to talk about that as the main point today. Now, why is this important? Why do we care about style? We might think, well, I'm playing the right notes, I'm playing the right rhythms, why isn't that enough? I can guarantee you that when you listen to music or when somebody comes and listens to you to play, they don't listen to think, man, so-and-so played the right notes or the right rhythms. That's kind of assumed, right? When we get up there on stage to perform, the audience assumes that we play the right notes and right rhythms. And it's all the other stuff that really makes an impact with them. It's maybe our sound, maybe the way we play as an ensemble, maybe the way we play dynamics from really quiet to really loud, or the way we play the style. That's what we're going to talk about today. Cool. So let's start with swing and how we build a good foundation of swing. Swing comes from us feeling triplets as our subdivision. Now, if we were playing a march, for example, we would feel eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and, or maybe 16th notes. 1 E and a 2 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a. However, here in swing, we generally want to feel a triplet subdivision. Even though we're not probably playing triplets most of the time, we want to feel a triplet subdivision. So if our tempo is here, 1, 2, 3, 4, triplet, 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 and so on and so forth. So we are going to say, rather than triplet, we're going to say 3 syllables. Do, dul, ah. In triplets. Doodle-la, 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 doodle-la. Now, once we get that going, we're going to accent the la, the last triplet, and we're going to de-emphasize the middle triplet, the dole. So then we're going to get, instead of doodle-la, 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 doodle-la. That's what gives us swing. That emphasis on the last triplet. That's what makes something swing. Now at a fast tempo, it's still there. It's a little more subtle, but it's still there. So let's check this out if I play something. Now I'm not going to play triplets. I'm going to play an eighth note line. But in my head, I'm thinking triplets in order to help me line up where the second eighth note is, because that's the one that's a little later on the beat. As tempos change, our swing tends to narrow down a little bit. I would say that was a pretty wide swing because I was playing a pretty slow tempo, but when we get fast, that swing narrows. So just to hear a little bit of difference there, I'm still feeling triplets in my head though. And so on and so forth. The final thing that we can think about when we think about this just swung eighth note component of playing swing is everybody plays it a little different. This is what makes players unique and individual, is the fact that some people played with a wider, more laid back swing. Some people played with a very narrow swing where the notes were more similar in note length and more closer to straight eighth notes, and that's all good. We get this through listening to a variety of different players. And for most players, it happens naturally. It's not something that we necessarily think about, well, I'm playing slow, so I'm going to play with a wide swing. We listen to players who play slow. We maybe transcribe them, we emulate them, and then eventually we can do so as well in an authentic way. Now, the last component here, before we get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty of some of this stuff, is we've got to think about articulation as well. When I was just playing, I did not play one articulation style, right? I played some notes a little more accented, some notes a little less accented. That creates the swing just as much as swung eighth notes. So if I play a line and I play just swung eighth notes with no accents, it's not going to sound that swinging. But if I put some accents in there, and we'll talk about a few of the places where we might want to think about those occurring, it's going to sound a little more swinging. Okay, I played a slightly different line, but the concept remains true. So we've got to make sure we think about articulation and not just swung eighth notes. Swung eighth notes are going to get us in the door, but that articulation piece is what will really make us sound authentic. All right, so in order to get all these articulations that we need to have to make these eighth note lines and melodies sound swinging, we need to think about three main articulations that happen. First, we have do, D-O. That's going to be on all connected notes, a slur, a tenuto. Second, we have da, D-A-H. I know sometimes I end up saying day as well, but we can think of those as the same. Da and day, D-A-H. Those are going to be accented notes that are a little bit longer or connected. An accent in front of the note with a connected back half of the note. The last one is dot, D-A-H-T. This is going to be a housetop accent. This is the one that I think is the most important out of all of these to really make sure that these dots have some kind of aggressive front end. They should be accented and short when we think about dot. The last one that I oftentimes hear students use is dit, D-I-T. For my money, I like to think about dot, D-A-H-T, for every short accented note. And sometimes we sing dit on staccato. When we're playing swing, the true staccato doesn't really exist. This nice light da, little buoyant note that we might have in a march, not so common in jazz. Almost all short notes receive a significant amount of accent. So we're going to think about dot for everything. So those are our three articulations that we're going to worry about. Let's figure out how to apply these on an example. Now we're going to talk about 6 rules here for how to apply this articulation stuff. So that might seem like a lot of information, but I think once we break it down into the example, it's going to make a lot of sense. So I'll show the example up here on the screen. I'm going to play it for you once with no articulation. This is the first 4 bars of the melody for a song called Second Time Around. This is kind of like a Frank Sinatra style song. So let's check it out. It'll be up in all your transpositions so you can follow along. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Cool, so there's my very basic form of the melody. No articulation, notes, rhythms are right, but a little bit bland when it comes to style. So let's check out a few of these rules and see how that can help us play this melody a little more convincingly. Okay, rule number 1. Single offbeat eighth notes followed by any other note length receive an accent, or da. So let's check out where this occurs in this song so we can see what that really means. That seems like a lot of information there. So if we're looking through our music, we're looking for a single offbeat eighth note that has anything else after it. It could be a long note, it could be a short note. It doesn't matter as long as it's a single offbeat eighth note. And if we look through our 5 measures here, we see one in the second measure on the and 4, right? We have a concert C that's followed by a quarter note. So that note is going to receive an accent, or our da, D-A-H. So let's put a da under that. We're going to put a little number 1 for rule number 1. We're going to analyze this chunk of the melody and see how all these rules apply. We will play some of this once we have a few more of those rules kind of applied to this. It won't make very much sense if we just play it on the very first one. So that is rule number 1. When we have single offbeat eighth notes followed by any other note length, we are going to give it a little bit of an accent. Moving on to rule number 2. Offbeat eighth and quarter notes followed by rests are short and accented. They are going to be a dot, D-A-H-T, right? Let's check out where these occur in this 4-measure example. So we have a few in the first measure, the end of 2, the end of 3, the end of 1 and the end of 2. Those are both single offbeat eighth notes followed by rests. They're going to be short and accented. We've got one in measure 3. Now check out measure 4. We've got a quarter note length on an offbeat, right? Because we have the and of 2 tied to the downbeat of 3. So because that quarter note occurs on an offbeat, it is going to be a short note, dot, D-A-H-T, instead of a long note. Cool. Let's go one more rule, and then maybe we'll try to play a few of these things. So here we go with rule number 3. Okay, rule number 3. Any note longer than a quarter note receives an accent, da, D-A-H. So we have one in the very first measure on the and of 2. We have one, 1, 2, 3, the fourth measure, that long note, that whole note, and then we have one at the end of our line here as well. So we've got quite a few of those. All those are going to get a little bit of an accent, and the longer they get, the more you're also going to want to play a little bit of a forte piano on them, particularly that long note in measure 4. Cool. Let's check out a few of these things, how they work. I'm going to actually play it with some of those style things that we have added. So let's check it out from the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. So to me, that already sounds a lot more swing. There's a few other things that I played in there that we're going to talk about as we go through the rest of these rules. Cool. So continuing to move on, here comes rule number 4. Quarter notes on downbeats must be defined if articulations are not marked. So what do I mean by a articulation must be defined, or a quarter note must be defined? Check out the 1, 2, third measure beats 1 and 2. I have a tenuto, and then I have a marcato. Those quarter notes are defined. The composer has told us how to play those. So when we see a tenuto, we know that means do, that's our long articulation. We see a marcato, we know that means dot, that's our accented and short articulation. Now, if those were not marked in your music, you would have to decide. Your band director might be able to help you. You might have to decide as the trombone section or as the trumpet section or whatever, how you're going to play those, because there's many different ways you can play that measure. So if I just take that measure, this is measure 3, what if I play both of those short and accented? Sounds fine. You know, it sounds good. What if I played them both long? Also sounds pretty good. However, if everybody in the section is playing something different, it's not going to sound so good. We've got to make sure we're all agreeing on articulation across the trombone section or whatever section we play in. And this way we need to define those. I can tell you most often quarter notes on downbeats are usually a little bit on the more spaced, shorter side with a little bit of an accent, but that is not necessarily a rule. That is just a good guideline. Okay, here comes rule number 5. All right, so this is going to be our last one for this example. We have one more rule we're going to talk about. We're going to use a slightly different example of music to check that one out. Again, there's a lot of information, so maybe look back over a few of these examples one more time just so you can kind of hear how it fits together. So rule number 5 is continuous eighth notes are legato, meaning we're going to use a do syllable. So the only place where we have continuous eighth notes in this are in the second measure. We have 2 eighth notes together, and then in the third measure we have 2 eighth notes together. Now, the second one of those eighth notes, it's affected by one of our other rules, right? It's an offbeat single eighth note, so it's going to be dot, D-A-H-T, but the first one of those is going to be do. So if we put all of this together and we sing this whole phrase, it's all written in there now, so let's give it a try singing it. We're just worried about rhythm. I'm not worried about singing pitch correct, I'm just worried about rhythm. So let's give it a try singing it from the beginning, and then we'll play it. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Da, da, do, da, da. Da, do, da, do, da, da. Da, da. Now, hopefully you heard that I was singing with a fair amount of like rhythmic percussiveness in my voice. We want to really be right on time with this, and we also want to sing it as close to the way that we're going to play it as we can. Playing is much more difficult than singing it, at least in rhythm. And so if we can sing it really swinging, we have a much higher chance of playing it very swinging when we go to our horn. So let's check out what it sounds like when I actually play it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, cool. So that covers most of our rules. Our last one, that just wasn't the best example for our last one here, so we're going to a different musical example. When we're thinking about an eighth note line, the highest note, this would be rule 6, the highest note in any eighth note line is going to receive some accent. So it's going to get a dot, D-A-H. And this really only applies to continuous eighth note lines, something that, you know, realistically is probably more idiomatic to a saxophone part, maybe a trumpet part, sometimes in a trombone part as well. But what we have were these long weaving eighth note lines. When we get to the top note, especially when we change direction, we want to have some accent on those notes that is going to contribute to it sounding more swinging. Let's look at an example here. We'll recall from one of our earlier rules that all moving eighth notes, when they're continuous, they are going to be sung as do. So they're going to be connected. So I'm going to play this line once with no articulation other than do. I'm just going to treat everything as a do connected. Again, fine, right notes, right rhythms. I was swinging eighth notes, but if I add some of this articulation of accents where I change direction on kind of the highest chunk of the line, and then maybe apply some of our other rules where appropriate, it's going to start to sound more swinging. Now, when I put the example up here, you'll notice I marked a da, an accent, in 2 places. We don't necessarily just think about the absolute highest point in the line. We look for where the line goes up and then maybe comes back down. Even if it goes up again, it is those changes of direction where we really want to have an accent. So let's check it out. Cool, and you could also hear that I had do dot at the end of that phrase because that fits one of our other rules. We had an offbeat eighth note followed by a rest, got to be short and accented. Now those 6 rules will get you through almost every articulation example that you're going to see when you're swinging, the vast majority. Now there will be a few exceptions here or there. You know, those are really guidelines. Even though they're listed as rules, they are strong guidelines and they're going to get you through most situations. Now what about some of the other styles that we play in jazz? Most of them draw heavily on these guidelines with maybe a few subtle differences. So let's see how that plays out in a few examples. We're going to start with a ballad. Now in a ballad, we want to switch our brains a little more over to how we might think in concert band from a sound perspective and also from an articulation perspective, but these rules will not be totally non-applicable. So let's look at an example. What we're going to think about is most things are going to be do's. They're going to be connected, maybe a da where they're long with a little bit of an accent. However, most things are going to be connected legato, but there are going to be a few places where we have maybe off note, offbeats, or possible we want to have slight forte pianos on notes where they're going to get a da, a accented note. So let's look at this example. This is 8 measures long, so I'm going to split this over 2 kind of screens. So make sure that you're following along. Again, it will be in all your transpositions. 1, 2. Cool, so we could hear mostly just played in a nice lyrical, pretty legato style with a few exceptions. I played accents on a few of the half notes, few of the longer notes, and especially on my, near the end of the example where I had that offbeat forte piano, I really leaned into that note with a pretty strong accent. So you can check out some of the, again, our syllables that I was thinking about when I played that. All right, our next style that we very commonly encounter when we're playing in jazz band are all the variety of different Latin styles. Now, this is a big area where there are many different styles that are possible from many different parts of the world, some from Brazil, some from Cuba, from Puerto Rico, a variety of different places. So we're going to talk in generalities here, not necessarily the specifics of each one of those styles. Most of our articulation rules are going to apply the same here. The only thing we might want to think about is things like accents, particularly on offbeats. We want to possibly be a little bit more aggressive, and clearly we're going to be doing these in a straight eighth note context now rather than swinging. So we want to be very aggressive on those offbeat eighth notes. And in this particular example, I chose this one because everything is written out there for you. All of the articulations are notated on this one. So not only do we need to know these rules that are implied oftentimes when we're playing swing, but we need to be very true to what is written on the chart as in this example. So let's check it out. Cool, so if we sung that, all of our rules would apply. These first 2 measures, do, do, dot, do do dot, do 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 da, do 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 dot. Right? We have continuous eighth notes, so they're going to be do's. We have an accent in there. We also have some marcatos, house tops. They're going to be dots or das. Check out the last measure, do 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 dot da. Right? That's a real classic rhythm right there, where we have do 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 dot DHT da. The last accent of that measure is the most important. Okay, so our last style that we want to think about is funk or rock. We play a variety of different, kind of funk and rock styles when we play in jazz band, and we've got to think about how these articulation rules apply there. One of the differences that you will see in these styles is they tend to have more figures that are written in 16th notes. Now, sometimes tempos are a little slower, so we're actually playing in double time. All the rules are going to apply just at a double time pace. So if we look at the example that's in front of you, check out the second full measure. There's a concert D flat on the and of 1. That note is tied over. It's a long note, and it's going to receive our sideways accent and a little bit of forte piano. However, before that, you have the same note on the 4E and the of beat 4. And so that note is now effectively an offbeat 8th note. It's an offbeat 16th note in this way, but because we're in double time, we're going to think about it as an offbeat 8th note. So it's going to receive our DAHT. So when we think about 16th notes, particularly in like a funk context, we want to just think, well, it's effectively like I'm playing swing from an articulation standpoint, but just double time. So let's check out how a little bit of this sounds. 1, 2, 3. And check out that last measure, do, do, dot, right? That is a great example. We have a quarter note there, which is now effectively a half note in double time, a dotted eighth note, which is like a dotted quarter note in double time, and then a single 16th note, which is like a single eighth note in double time. So we can apply all of our swing rules to playing funk or rock when we have these double time figures. We just have to shift our brain a little bit rhythmically to make sure it is in the right place. All right, I hope this lesson helped you understand a little bit better about how some of these stylistic things play out in the music that we play. It is one of the most important things you can do to make your playing sound more authentic is be thoughtful about this stuff. A lot of it comes from listening, as all stuff does in music. However, having some of these kind of practical rules can help guide you really well. So I hope you'll tune in again next Saturday at 11 o'clock as we continue in this interlude time where we're still trying to connect with students and community members, even though we can't meet with you face to face. And we'll see you then.